Hi, my name is Jon Tracey, and this is the first of hopefully many video blog entries in which I rant about stuff that annoys me. I'm a student at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, and I'm currently an acting major, but I'm switching over to political science starting next semester. Anyway, here I go. I read an article entitled 55th Anniversary of the Rosa Parks Bus Stunt by James Edwards. He writes, "This week apparently marks the 55th anniversary celebration, yes, celebration is in quotes, of communist Rosa Parks' stunt on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama. It never ceases to amaze me how lawbreakers, Parks, civil rights activists, illegal aliens, etc. are heralded as heroes by the media, while hardworking, tax-paying, God-fearing middle Americans are treated as criminals." First of all, James Edwards, I'm not sure you completely grasp the concept of what criminal treatment really entails. You see, a social stigma against spouting racial slurs doesn't really constitute criminal treatment. Second of all, calling Rosa Parks a communist has no business being in this article. It's simply an ad hominem attack against Rosa Parks. It's a logical fallacy playing on the fact that most Americans think communism is bad. It does not constitute a logical argument, however, it does constitute you being kind of a jerk. Anyway, here I go with my actual rant. You see, most of us commend Rosa Parks because she did the right thing, even when the law told her she shouldn't. See, most of us follow the law because we believe it's the right thing, and it makes sense. It makes sense for us not to murder people, it makes sense for us not to shoplift. However, if we go back to the 1940s and 1950s, we see that it doesn't make sense for Rosa Parks to have to give up her seat to a white person, because Rosa Parks was a person too. Martin Luther King, Gandhi, and even renowned white person Henry David Thoreau wrote about civil disobedience. King wrote that one who breaks the law must do so openly and lovingly, and if we look to the Rosa Parks incident, Parks most definitely did what she did openly and lovingly. She did not hurt anyone, she did not attempt to hurt anyone, in fact she barely inconvenienced anyone. So we see that Rosa Parks most definitely did what she did openly and lovingly, and in this way we can grow as a society. Only through breaking laws that are unjust can we actually grow and create the great society that we have today, because today most people would agree that what Rosa Parks did was right. And James Edwards, you're extremely quick to condemn anyone who breaks the law like Rosa Parks, but clearly you wouldn't condemn our founding fathers. Now, if we look to George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and the rest of our founding fathers, we see that what were they really but lawbreakers? They held a Tea Party and they broke English laws and they held a revolution, but without doing that, we wouldn't have this nation today. We wouldn't be able to celebrate the freedoms that we do today. So clearly, civil disobedience is the right thing to do as long as you do so openly and lovingly. Now, the political correct movement, I don't necessarily agree with, simply because most people who are for the movement believe that racism should be abolished, and I don't think racism should completely be abolished, because if you want to be a racist, you have the right to your own opinion as granted by the Constitution, and if you want to be a racist in your own home, that's fine by me, but we shouldn't be able to spout racial slurs in public, or, for example, call a black person the N-word, simply because also in the Constitution, under your freedom of speech, are certain clauses. One of the clauses, for instance, is that you can't shout fire in a crowded theater because that presents a clear and present danger. Another clause is that you aren't allowed to use fighting words. Fighting words are words that, by their very definition, are meant to inflict harm in another person, and yes, that's exactly what a racial slur or calling a black person the N-word does. It inflicts harm in that person, and that's exactly what it's meant to do. Therefore, constitutionally, you shouldn't be allowed to do it. Now, the reason that originally racial slurs were allowed by our founding fathers and it wasn't strictly enforced was because it was a completely different time. Obviously, black people weren't considered people, and we still had slavery, so clearly that would make sense back then. But as we've grown as a society and realized that, yes, these are people and they deserve the same rights as citizens, as American citizens, we should see that calling someone a racial slur should not be allowed under the Constitution. Now, although I don't necessarily agree with the political correct movement, I think a lot of people in the anti-politically correct movement don't understand that their movement is a lot larger than they think. They're always acting as the downtrodden. They're always acting like they're being treated as criminals. However, I've seen a lot of chain emails and I've seen a lot of notes on Facebook and I've heard a lot of people talking, and every time they say that political correctness is stupid, they say that the people who don't agree with political correctness are always downtrodden, and I wish they just would start making arguments instead of just acting that way. Because really, they're not that small of a movement. They make up a very large amount of Americans, and they should stop acting like they're not and see the truth. Now, I feel that the reason for political political correctness and also for racism is that hate comes from a lack of understanding, the way that racists hate minorities, but also the way that non-racists hate racists. They simply don't understand each other, and that's one of the main flaws in our society, especially in the two-party system. We have Democrats and we have Republicans, and whoever's in power gets their way. There's never any compromise or working together because people never really sit down and talk to each other. I think very seldom do non-racists and racists really just sit down and have a conversation without yelling at each other and simply logically try to understand each other. It's absurd how little people will accept other people's opinions or even listen to them. And I think the only way that we can have progress is through understanding, and the only way to understand is by talking and not being jerks to each other and accepting others' opinions as actual valid opinions and listening to logic. Now, I really love Jon Stewart's and Stephen Colbert's rally to restore sanity. Although they're extremely liberal, they sort of put that aside, and they held their rally just to restore sanity, to get everyone to talk to each other. And another thing I thought was really good, the Illinois Senate election was a really dirty election between Alexei Giannoulias and Mark Kirk, and it was one of the dirtiest elections in political history. But afterwards, Kirk and Giannoulias, after Kirk was elected, sat down and had coffee together. And to me, that's such an amazing symbol for a country that we can look upon. Even though we all have differences, we can all come together and understand each other. Because the only way we can create progress and to create a better society is by understanding each other. So, thank you for listening to that blog, and there might be more. Thank you.